So yeah, I did the thing everyone jokes about. The thing you think you'd never do because you're smarter than that. I hit reply all on a company-wide email chain, and within 3 minutes, I went from anonymous marketing analyst to legendary cautionary tale. And before you roll your eyes and think, oh, that's just an embarrassing moment, big deal, let me stop you right there. This wasn't just a cringe email. This one accidentally exposed an affair, ignited a corporate scandal, and completely derailed my career. I haven't told this story publicly before. Not really. But enough time has passed. NDAs have expired. Names have been changed. And honestly, I think I need to get this out of my system. Let me take you back 6 years, to a gray Tuesday that started like any other. I worked for a mid-sized tech firm in Boston. You know the kind, disruptive, open-plan offices, cold brew on tap, and way too many team-building exercises. I was in my 3rd year there, steadily coasting through life in the I'll get serious about my future next year phase. That morning, our HR director Janet sent out a company-wide email titled Mental Health Support Resources plus Employee Feedback. Nothing juicy, just some PR-safe language about mental wellness initiatives and a few embedded links to surveys and hotlines. Boring, right? Well, until he replied. Ben, the VP of product. Technically 2 levels above me, but in reality, a smug, overpaid 38-year-old man-child who treated Slack like Tinder and had the emotional maturity of a soggy croissant. Ben replied all to the email by accident, typing what he meant to send to someone privately. It was just 2 lines, but it changed everything. God, I can't sit through another one of Janet's fake wellness webinars. Shoot me. P.S. You looked insane in that red dress yesterday. I'm still thinking about it. And yes, he replied all to the whole company. Roughly 230 people. People gasped. Slack exploded. A few interns thought it was a prank. But then someone checked the email metadata. It was real. Timestamped. Unedited. I remember staring at it. Frozen. Not sure whether to laugh, report it, or pretend I hadn't seen it. A few people were already speculating about the red dress. Who had been wearing one yesterday? That's when I made the mistake. A small, stupid, heat-of-the-moment mistake. I hit reply all and typed, imagine being this much of a walking lawsuit. HR webinar might be the only thing that saves you, Ben. I meant it to be a joke. A way to defuse the awkwardness. A moment of internet heroism. People do that, right? Clap back at the boss. Get a few virtual high fives. Ah, Ben gets roasted. Move on. I hit send. 3 minutes passed. At first, silence. Then the floodgates burst open. First, it was just laughing emojis from colleagues. A few LOL savage replies. But then, someone else chimed in anonymously through a dummy email, copy-pasting screenshots of Slack messages Ben had allegedly sent to female interns. Then another. Then someone dropped a redacted HR complaint. And then, like a glitch in the Matrix, my email inbox updated with a new reply all. Ask Rachel in sales how supportive Ben was during her onboarding. Or Marissa. Or Alina. Suddenly, my inbox wasn't just a joke thread. It was a live firestorm. An accidental internal #MeToo moment, unfolding in real time with me unknowingly at the center. Ben. He went silent. Janet? Radio silent. IT disabled the email thread within 20 minutes. But the damage was done. Screenshots were already making their way across group chats. Hedged. Blind. Hell. Someone even posted a vague TikTok hinting at a toxic tech VP getting exposed. By 2 p.m. that day, I was called into HR. Ben was already in the building. His face was pale, his expression locked in a kind of calm panic only narcissists are capable of when their empire is cracking. HR asked me if I'd meant to send the message publicly, if I knew about the complaints, if I'd planned it. No, I said truthfully. I was just being sarcastic. I didn't expect, but my voice trailed off, because somewhere deep inside me I did know. Not about the specific women, not about the Slack receipts, but I knew Ben was off. I'd heard the whispers, the too long looks, the way he acted around interns. HR didn't say much after that. Just told me to stay available and avoid discussing the matter externally. I wasn't fired. Not then. But the air around me had changed. I went back to my desk, head spinning, wondering if I just torched my career or accidentally done something bigger than myself. But that was just day one. The real chaos hadn't even started yet. You know that feeling when everything around you feels normal, but you know something is fundamentally broken beneath the surface? That was the rest of that week at work. People still typed. Phones still rang. The vending machine still jammed if you pressed B3. But the vibe? Completely off. Tense. Electric. Like everyone was waiting for something to explode. My email reply had gone viral internally. Even people from other departments I'd never spoken to were suddenly dropping by my desk, giving me supportive nods like I was some whistleblower martyr. Except I wasn't. Not really. I didn't do it to be brave. I didn't have some grand moral stance. I just couldn't stand Ben and made a sarcastic joke. But now, the accidental spark I'd set off had become a wildfire, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Ben didn't show up for the next 2 days. Rumor was he'd been placed on leave pending investigation. A vague corporate phrase that usually meant, "We don't know how deep this rabbit hole goes yet." But he wasn't the only one being investigated. Thursday afternoon, I was called back to HR. Not just Janet this time. Legal was there too. A man in a gray suit introduced himself as external counsel.
No smile.
No small talk. Just paperwork and icy stares. "We'd like to discuss your role in the email chain from earlier this week." My role? I blinked, trying not to flinch. I didn't leak anything. I just replied. The lawyer's expression didn't change. "We're aware. But your response initiated a chain of events that led to potential exposure of confidential personnel matters. Right? Because I made a snarky joke about a VP being a creep, and now they were implying I triggered some kind of legal avalanche. I sat there, answering their questions, trying to stay calm. Yes, I knew about Ben's reputation, everyone did, even if they wouldn't admit it on record. No, I didn't conspire with anyone to release the HR complaints. Yes, I understood that my email could be perceived as inflammatory. At one point, Janet, who had the nerve to act offended, said, "This is why we always ask employees to go through proper channels." I almost laughed.
Proper channels?
You mean the ones that buried Rachel's complaint? The ones that kept Ben in power while women cycled out every 6 months with nervous breakdowns and vague resignations? But I bit my tongue, because now I understood something important. They weren't just investigating Ben. They were preparing to cover their own asses. And I was a problem they needed to contain. By Friday, things got worse. Someone had leaked screenshots of Ben's Slack messages to a friend in media. An anonymous post showed up on a whistleblower Twitter account, redacted names, but anyone from our company would recognize the language. It went viral. And suddenly, our firm wasn't just dealing with internal misconduct. We were a trending topic. #Tech2 started showing up under the tweets. Journalists started reaching out to employees for comment. It was a nightmare for PR. An emergency town hall was scheduled. The CEO, who hadn't been seen in public since the pandemic, stood awkwardly in front of a camera, delivering a dead-eyed statement about respect in the workplace and swift internal action. He never said Ben's name, never mentioned the victims, never once acknowledged that someone inside the company had known about this for years. That's when the guilt really started to hit me. I wasn't the one who'd suffered, but I had been a coward. I remembered one intern, Lena, who'd suddenly left after just 3 months.
No explanation.
I used to joke she couldn't handle the fast pace. But now, I knew better. I should have asked. I should have paid attention. Instead, I'd sat safely in my cubicle, laughing at Slack memes while Ben pulled strings behind the scenes, making people like her disappear. And now, because of one sarcastic email, the dam had finally broken. I was still processing all of this when my manager, Kevin, called me into a meeting. Kevin had always been decent, friendly dad joke energy. But now, he looked like someone had stapled his nerves to his spine. "Legal's asking for your internal comms," he said, not meeting my eyes. "All Slack history, emails, even DMs. I felt my stomach drop. Wait, what? Why? They're doing a digital sweep, trying to establish timelines. Timelines, which meant trying to see if I was a liability. That's when it really hit me. I was a pawn, a potentially dangerous one, and the company wasn't going to protect me. Not after this. That night, I opened my laptop and stared at my inbox. An email from Rachel, yes, that Rachel, the first woman named in the leaks, sat unread at the top. Subject: thank you. I opened it. I don't know if you meant to do it, but your email gave me the courage I didn't have before. I thought I was alone, that no one believed me. Now I know I wasn't crazy. Thank you. I sat there, staring at the screen until my vision blurred. That one message changed everything, because up until that moment, I'd been scared, ashamed, embarrassed that my dumb mistake had triggered a PR disaster. But now I felt something different. Rage. Ben was the predator. The company had buried it. But I was the one under a microscope? No, I wasn't going to let them spin this into a rogue employee causes chaos narrative. They wanted a timeline? I was about to give them one. A very detailed one. I didn't sleep that night. It's hard to explain the exact feeling unless you've been there. The moment your fear stops being fear and turns into something sharper. More focused. They thought they could pin this on me. Spin the story. Control the fallout. But that email from Rachel changed everything. It wasn't just a thank you, it was a reminder that people had been hurt, that silence hadn't protected them, that someone needed to do more than sit in a room and answer questions from legal with, I don't recall. So I started making a list. Not a dramatic list of enemies, but a different kind of list. A truth map. Every time I had seen something strange. Every time someone left abruptly. Every whispered rumor, every lunchroom awkward silence when Ben walked by, every off joke that made people laugh too loudly, nervously. March 12, 2020, Alina stopped coming in. Her desk was cleared by IT.
No good vie.
April 2021, Tasha from engineering started crying after a performance review with Ben. I'd passed her in the hallway. She said it was just allergies. June 2021, I overheard 2 interns talking about a weird dinner invite. August 2022, Marissa transferred departments out of nowhere. She had just gotten promoted. Little pieces. No one ever said anything outright. That's how fear works. It wraps itself around you until silence feels like the safer option. But when I looked at it all on paper, it wasn't silence anymore. It was a pattern. And I wasn't going to ignore it this time. I spent most of Saturday compiling everything. Emails, Slack chats, meeting invites with vague titles, even calendar screenshots from old department syncs where Ben would coincidentally schedule one-on-one coffees with women who'd soon request transfers or disappear entirely. By Sunday night, I had a PDF that would make a lawyer's hands sweat. And I wasn't done. I reached out to Rachel. I didn't know if she'd respond, but part of me hoped that she, more than anyone, would understand what I was trying to do. She messaged back within an hour. You don't know how long I've waited for someone else to speak up. I have screenshots, Slack logs, HR email chains where they basically gaslit me. I'll send them. She did. All of it. And then she added one more line. Be careful. They're going to try to bury you too. Monday morning, I walked into the office with 2 thumb drives in my coat pocket and 1 tucked in my sock. Just in case. I was ready. I had the truth, I had backup, and for the first time in a week I had purpose. They called me into legal again. Same stiff conference room. Same external counsel. But this time Janet wasn't there. Replaced by a man in a pinstripe suit who looked like he measured blood pressure by eye contact alone. He started talking about escalating consequences, corporate liability, and unauthorized distribution of sensitive communication. I waited until he was done. Then I placed the drive on the table. I think you'll want to see this before you draft any more talking points. He looked at it like I just dropped a grenade between us. What is this? Timeline, witness accounts, screenshots, Slack messages, including from Rachel, Alina, And 3 former employees you've never mentioned once. The room shifted. I could feel it, like someone had flipped a switch and suddenly realized the power wasn't just on their side anymore. You do understand, he said carefully, that sharing internal communications could be a breach of confidentiality. Only if I signed an NDA, I replied, meeting his eyes. I haven't, but I can promise you, if this goes public, you'll wish I had. The silence after that was so thick you could chew it. I stood up. I'll give you a day. Review it. Then decide if you're going to clean house or just polish the mess. And I walked out. By lunchtime, the whispers had turned into something else. Rachel told me 2 other women had reached out to her. One of them had already spoken to a journalist off the record. Another was talking to legal counsel. And Ben? Still radio silent. But not for long. Because at 3:43 p.m., an internal email pinged every inbox in the company. Subject: Leadership Transition Office of the CEO Ben was stepping down. Effective immediately.
No farewell. No spin.
Just a polite paragraph about restructuring and a boilerplate line about wishing him the best in his future endeavors. People in the office started clapping.
No joke, actual applause.
Someone popped a can of La Croix and shouted, "Finally!" I didn't clap. I sat at my desk, staring at the screen, heart pounding. Not because Ben was gone, because I knew this wasn't over. There was still one problem. They were still trying to make me the fall person. At 5:02 p.m., my Slack pinged. Private message. From Janet. We need to talk. Not here. Please don't go to the press yet. Yet, that word stopped me cold. Because if I was being asked not to go to the press, it meant they knew exactly how bad this really was. And it meant I had leverage. Finally, I didn't answer Janet's Slack message right away. I just stared at those 7 little words. Please don't go to the press yet. Not don't go to the press, but yet. Told me everything I needed to know. They weren't trying to stop the story. They were trying to buy time. Time to clean up, shift blame, maybe even rewrite their own version of what happened. I waited 10 minutes, then replied. You want to talk? We do it on my terms. Coffee shop on 6th. 7 p.m. Come alone. I expected her to push back. She didn't. Just sent a single reply. Okay. The coffee shop was half empty, dimly lit, with flickering bulbs that buzzed like they were on edge too. Felt, right, off balance, unsteady, like everything else in my life at that moment. Janet was already there when I walked in.
No laptop. No notepad.
Just her. Sitting in a booth with her coat still on and her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like she needed the heat to stop her from shivering. I slid into the booth across from her, not bothering to smile. She looked older than I remembered. Tired. Like the stress of the last week had aged her by a decade. You look like you haven't slept, I said flatly. I haven't, she replied. Silence. Then she said, what you did. It was reckless. I laughed once. Sharp. Not as reckless as protecting a serial harasser for 3 years. Her face tightened. It wasn't like that. Oh? Enlighten me. Janet leaned in, lowering her voice. We tried. HR flagged Ben multiple times. We elevated it to the board, but they shut it down. Said he was too valuable. Said we didn't have concrete evidence. You think I didn't want to do more? I narrowed my eyes. You could have gone public. I had kids to feed. She snapped, instantly softer after. I'm not proud of what I let slide. But don't think for a second this company operates on justice. It runs on risk management. That hit hard, because she wasn't wrong. Every policy, every poster about zero tolerance, every watered-down training video, it was all there to manage risk, not protect people. You asked me not to go to the press, I said. Why? Janet exhaled. Because they're preparing to settle. Quietly. Rachel. Marissa. Maybe even a few others. But if this goes public, if it hits mainstream media, the board will panic. The company goes into crisis mode. And you care because? Because they'll look for blood. She looked me straight in the eye. They're already drafting a narrative. You were a disgruntled employee. You initiated the leaks. You triggered chaos. You created exposure. They're blaming me. She nodded once. But I didn't leak anything. I believe you. Doesn't matter. I leaned back, the weight of it pressing against my ribs. I'd known it deep down, but hearing it out loud, that was different. What do you want from me? I asked. Janet's next words were quiet, calculated. We want your silence. No press.
No interviews.
No hedge.
No TikToks.
You sign an NDA. We give you a severance package. 6 months. Extended health benefits. A clean reference. I laughed again, louder this time. You want me to disappear. I want you to be safe. That gave me pause. Safe. Janet glanced around the cafe, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't understand how far this could go. You embarrassed a VP. Exposed board negligence. Your emails are already being dissected by compliance. They'll find something. A joke. A meme. Anything they can twist. So you're saying if I don't take the deal, they'll ruin you. Quietly. Permanently. I didn't respond right away. I left the coffee shop with the offer hanging in the air like a ticking bomb. 6 months of silence. 6 months of disappearing. 6 months of letting them win. I walked for blocks without thinking. Past flickering street lamps. Past people laughing at tables. Sipping wine. Living their oblivious, ordinary lives. And somewhere in the back of my head, a voice whispered, maybe it's not your fight. Maybe you did enough. Take the money. Walk away. But then I thought about Rachel's message. About Lena, who never got to say anything. About the interns who still worked there. I thought about the list I'd made. And I realized something. I wasn't scared anymore. They wanted silence because silence worked. But not this time. Not with me. So I pulled out my phone, opened my email and typed a new subject line. Subject, media inquiry, workplace misconduct exposure, and I hit send. The thing about sending that email, it didn't feel brave in the moment. It felt terrifying. Like I just pulled the fire alarm in a crowded building and had no idea if I'd be carried out on shoulders or trampled to death on the way to the exit. I didn't sleep that night. Again. Not from guilt or regret. Those had long been replaced, but from adrenaline. That sick, humming kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward like electricity. The reporter responded by 9 a.m. She was fast, professional, and surprisingly calm for someone who'd just been handed what she later called a damning, corporate implosion-level leak from inside a mid-sized tech darling. Her name was Dana Liu, investigative journalist for an online outlet known for breaking stories that scared the hell out of companies like mine. Not some clickbait gossip mill real journalism. Footnotes, verifications, lawyer-vetted kind of stuff. She asked for a call. I took it in my car during lunch, parked 3 blocks from the office so no one could see me. The windows up, my heart thudding like it was trying to punch a hole in my ribcage. Before we go further, Dana said, I need to ask, are you willing to go on record? I paused. She could hear it. That hesitation. That line between fear and resolve. I can go on background, I said. Off the record for now. But I'll give you names, dates, documents, everything. You understand, she said carefully, that once this is published, there's no putting it back in the box. I know, I said. That's the point. By Thursday, the article was live. Toxic culture, silenced voices. Inside the collapse of one tech company's golden boy, I still remember the headline. Burned into my brain. Black serif font. Sitting at the top of my screen like a shot fired in broad daylight. The article didn't just name Ben. It named the board members who buried complaints. It included quotes from former employees, anonymized but raw. One woman said, they told me it was his word against mine. But he was a VP. I was a temp. What chance did I have? It mentioned the HR Wellness Initiative and how it became a smokescreen for deeper rot. It even quoted my email. My now infamous reply all, the spark that started it all. Not mockingly, not sarcastically, but as the moment someone finally, even accidentally, said enough. The fallout was instant. Twitter blew up. Employees past and present chimed in. People reposted the article with comments like, "I worked there. This doesn't surprise me. I knew about Ben. Everyone did." This explains why HR was always understaffed when it came to real issues. The company released a statement, a generic, soulless wall of words about learning and growing and creating safe spaces. But it didn't work, because Dana had receipts, and so did we. That afternoon, Janet called me. I didn't answer. She sent a text. "You don't understand what you've done." I stared at it for a long time, then finally replied, "No, you don't." By the end of the week, the board announced an independent investigation. The CEO resigned. HR leadership transitioned out. Ben deleted all his social media. And I was suspended for violating internal communications policy. Not fired, not praised, just quietly sidelined. Pushed out of the building like someone with a contagious disease. They didn't want the optics of punishing me too loudly. But they sure as hell didn't want me around anymore. I got the message. And honestly, I didn't care. Because this wasn't about keeping my job anymore. This was about making sure they couldn't keep doing this to anyone else. And then something strange happened. People started messaging me. From other companies, other industries, strangers, women, men, interns, managers, HR reps. "You gave me the courage to report." This story made me realize I wasn't crazy. We need more people like you inside. It wasn't fame. I didn't want that. It was recognition. The quiet kind. The whispered kind. The kind that made me realize I hadn't just caused chaos. I'd created space. For truth. For accountability. For others. For myself. Because, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a nobody in a gray cubicle. I felt like someone who did the right thing. And that mattered. But just when I thought the story had peaked, when the headlines started fading and the office resumed its haunted silence, I got an email. No subject.
No signature.
Just 2 lines. "You think this is over? It's not." You know that moment in a movie when the hero walks away from the burning building, dramatic music swelling, wind in their hair, and everything feels like it's finally over? Yeah. Real life isn't like that. In real life, when you burn something down, especially something powerful, you don't get applause. You get watched. You get warned. And sometimes you get a message like the one I got. "You think this is over? It's not." No name. No email signature. Sent from a burner account. Nothing traceable. Just those 2 lines. Like a whisper left behind in a smoldering ruin. I stared at it for 10 minutes. Then read it again. And again. I wasn't afraid. Not exactly. But something shifted in me. That email wasn't about information. It was about control. A reminder that while I'd exposed a part of the machine, there were still gears turning in the shadows. I forwarded the message to Dana, the journalist. She called me 5 minutes later. Her voice was sharp, precise. "That's intimidation." "Yeah," I said deadpan. "Subtle, huh? We can include it in the follow-up piece. I don't think they care about bad press anymore." She paused. "Then what do you want to do?" I didn't answer right away, because I wasn't sure. This whole thing had started with an impulsive email. Now I was a whistleblower with a suspension notice, a stack of death stares from legal, and a DM folder full of other people's trauma. The kind of people who'd been burned and silenced and needed someone to not disappear. I couldn't walk away now, but I also couldn't keep guessing who still wanted me gone. So I did what I do best. I started digging. My access to the company's systems had been revoked the minute they suspended me. But the thing about tech companies? They're cocky about their architecture. I still had access to some of the vendor tools, cloud-based dashboards, analytics suites, and one godsend of a project management tool that no one had thought to unlink my credentials from. It wasn't a backdoor. It was a forgotten hallway. And buried in there was the real map of how the company worked. Private task threads. Slack to CRM integrations. Project logs. One thread stood out. Reputation Management Protocol, Q4. It wasn't labeled, "Let's bury the whistleblower." but it might as well have been. Inside were task notes from legal, comms, and surprise surprise board liaison. It was all coded language, but the intent was clear. Isolate primary source from active channels. Neutralize sentiment by questioning credibility. Evaluate digital history for grounds of termination. CYA. CYA equals cover your ass. They weren't just defending themselves. They were preparing to rewrite history. I scrolled further, heart pounding. Then I saw something that made me stop breathing. A name. Janet. Task owner for multiple entries. She wasn't just caught in the middle, like she claimed. She was coordinating the response. She was the one who tried to buy my silence. And now she was helping bury me. I didn't rage. I didn't panic. I screenshotted everything, backed it up in 3 places, then forwarded it to Dana with a single line. You'll want to see this before your follow-up hits. Trust me. She replied almost instantly. Holy sh*T. This changes everything. The next morning, a second article dropped. It didn't just expand the story. It blew it wide open. Silencing the whistle. How corporate crisis management became a threat machine. This one didn't focus on Ben. This one focused on me. On what happened after. On how whistleblowers aren't just punished, they're erased. It included quotes from anonymous insiders, leaked task notes, scrubbed clean of names, and a scathing analysis of the exact tactics used by corporations to discredit those who speak out. It painted a picture that was chilling in its precision. The message is clear. If you expose the truth, the system doesn't just remove the cancer. It removes you. And somewhere in the middle, Dana included a short paragraph. The whistleblower, who remains suspended without cause, has since received threats and warnings. Internal documents suggest a coordinated effort to discredit and isolate her. They didn't use my name, but everyone knew. I didn't check my inbox for 2 hours. Couldn't. When I finally did, there were over 90 new messages. Some were from strangers, some from journalists, one from a recruiter with a subject line that read, "We admire courage." But one message stopped me cold. It was from an old intern, someone I barely remembered. You probably don't remember me. I was in the summer cohort 3 years ago. Ben cornered me at a happy hour, told me I owed him for the recommendation he gave me. I didn't report it. I was 22 and terrified. Thank you for what you did, for not letting them make you small. I cried for the first time in weeks, not because I was afraid, because someone remembered, because someone saw me. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, eating cold leftovers and watching the city buzz outside my window. I wasn't just the girl who replied all anymore. I was the girl who fought back, and someone was clearly pissed about it. But the thing about people who send anonymous threats, they usually make one mistake. And when they do, I will find them. You ever feel that shift? The exact second when you stop being hunted and start becoming the hunter? That was me. The moment I read that anonymous email. You think this is over? It's not. I stopped being a casualty. I became a problem. And I was ready to be one. Because that's the thing people like Ben and Janet never understand about people like me. We don't set out to burn it all down. We just want it to be fair, to be safe, to be human. But when they try to bury us, we bring the shovel back. I started with the metadata. I'd forwarded the original threat to Dana, and her digital forensics team pulled what they could. Not much, just a burner Gmail address and an IP that pinged from a co-working space downtown. But it gave me a thread, a single, fraying edge of something bigger. I went to the space myself, wore a hoodie, kept my head down, and bought a day pass with cash. They wouldn't give me much without a warrant. But I wasn't looking for full access, I just needed patterns. So I sat in a corner near the router and watched. I watched faces. I watched behaviors. I watched for anyone who flinched when I pulled out my laptop and started typing furiously, pretending I was someone to be afraid of. And I saw him. Tall. Late 30s. Khakis. The kind of guy who calls himself a strategic operations consultant and treats LinkedIn like a dating app. He walked like someone who didn't want to be noticed. Too careful with his posture. Too deliberate with where he sat. Then he opened his laptop, and my screen caught the reflection of his homepage. CorpComSecured.net. I froze. That wasn't a normal domain. That was the vendor our company used for private board communications. The one platform Janet never let employees see. I pretended to stand and stretch, casually walked past him, and glanced at his screen.
Gee.
Unread message count. 1. Subject. Target escalating. Time to intervene. My blood ran cold. Not because he was watching me, but because I'd found him. I left the co-working space without saying a word. I didn't confront him. Not yet. That wasn't the play. Instead, I called Dana. I need you to pull vendor contracts from the last year. Anything linked to CorpComSecured.net. She didn't even ask why. 6 hours later, she sent a file. Consultant name. Harrison Lee, contracted through Shell LLC, registered in Delaware. Signed off by Janet F. Scope. Crisis communication. Discretion required. That was it. Proof that the company had hired a third-party contractor to manage their internal retaliation. And Janet? Janet had signed it. Here's what I knew now. I was being monitored, not just by HR but by an outside consultant. Janet had lied to my face about wanting me safe, about being caught in the middle. The company hadn't just tried to discredit me. They'd built an entire shadow campaign around me. And still, somehow, they underestimated me. So I did what I always do when someone draws the line in sand. I stepped right over it. I booked a meeting with Janet, sent through an anonymous calendar invite. Just the name, clarification, truth.
No sender.
No subject, just a location. The rooftop cafe across from HQ. 3 p.m. Friday. She showed up. Of course she did. She had no idea who sent it, but someone like Janet? She always wants control, and you can't control what you don't understand. She walked in with her usual confidence, but I saw the flicker in her eyes when she didn't immediately spot me, so I stepped out from behind a pillar. Surprise, I said quietly. Her jaw tensed. What the hell is this? I handed her a folder. Inside, printouts of the contract, screenshots of CorpComSecured's interface, a photo of Harrison Lee from the co-working space, and a sticky note on top. You lied. You tried to bury me. And now I have everything. Janet didn't speak. For once, the queen of HR spin had nothing to say. So I leaned in. You came to me begging not to go to the press, while you were simultaneously hiring someone to track, isolate, and intimidate me. You used company funds to contract a fixer. You authorized it. You own this. You don't understand what you're doing, she whispered. No, I said. You don't understand what you've started. She reached for the folder. I pulled it back. You don't get to keep this. It's already been scanned, copied, and backed up in 3 locations. You had your chance. Now I'm giving you mine. Her eyes narrowed. What do you want? Simple, I said. Your resignation. Public. Acknowledging what you did. Or I go public again. And this time, with everything. You think the company will protect you now? I smiled. Cold. Calm. I don't need their